cross-examination for just about 3 hours. Questions so far today have mostly centered around text messages, some detailing their sexual encounters that she and Combs, these text messages, sent one another during their 11-year relationship. The defense is trying to convince jurors that Ventura was not coerced into acts by Combs, but rather she was consenting.
Just a short time ago, the judge told the defense that it has until tomorrow afternoon to wrap up their cross-examination. Prosecutors yesterday said it was possible that Ventura, who is well into her third trimester of pregnancy, could go into labor this weekend. With us now are Dave Ehrenberg, a former state attorney for Palm Beach County in Florida, and attorney and legal affairs commentator Ariva Martin. Also with us, Richard Gabriel, a veteran trial consultant and president of Decision Analysis. He's actually the author of Acquittal, which highlights his work on several high-profile cases. Also with us is Jem Aswad, executive music editor for Variety. Thank you all for being with us. I want to get to some of the latest details that we've gotten from the courtroom, specifically some of the text messages that have been exchanged between Cassie Ventura and Combs, and specifically the defense asking Cassie Ventura about a conversation in March 2017 when Ventura told Combs to essentially stop playing the victim, saying that she loves freak-offs when we both want them. And then she was asked about that text message. She said, "I would say that loving freak-offs were just words at that point." Dave, I wonder what you make of the defense going through these text messages, trying to paint a picture of cohesiveness and even agreement over these sexual encounters that the prosecution is saying were coerced.
I definitely think the defense has won some points because although the prosecution tried to take the sting out of some of this by showing that she may have texted Diddy that she liked freak-offs, but at some point this was force, fraud, or coercion, that it was against her will, and she was just trying to please a man she loved, an unrequited love. But still, jurors are human beings, and when they see this, they're going to cast some doubts, have some doubts in their minds over whether this was consensual. Now, the prosecution gets a chance to rehabilitate the witness later, and that's when Cassie can say, you know, I said what I said, but you can see by my actions, by his actions, that this wasn't consensual. I mean, he beat me up. He forced me to do things against my will. Even if I was into it at the beginning just to please him, it doesn't mean that I consented the whole way through. But, you know, jurors are going to come at this from their own life experiences with freak-offs or something foreign, unique, weird. And if they think that Cassie at some point was part of it willingly, yeah, that's going to be really bad for the prosecution.
Richard, when she says that I love our freak-offs when we both want it, I mean, when we both want it, inherent in that is that sometimes she didn't. And I wonder what the jury might think about that.
Well, I think what the defense is really trying to do right now is to establish Cassie as her own agency. In other words, all of this really leads up to them establishing she is independent. She's making her own decisions. She's communicating with Sean about the relationship. She's talking in a very independent way. So they're trying to not just establish that sometimes she actually participated willingly in this, i.e. consensually, but also that she's her own person. In other words, she could have walked away at various points and not have participated. Jurors are going to be fundamentally confronted with these two different versions, these two different character portrayals of who Cassie Ventura is, and ultimately decide what it is. The complication of the relationship is a key point for the defense.
Imran, notably, there was one message, and I believe we have the graphic to show it, in which Cassie Ventura is describing to Combs going back and forth in her mind with wanting and not wanting to do it, these staged sexual encounters. She said the last time was a mistake and since has made me feel a little dirty and grimy as opposed to sexual and spontaneous. It seems like jurors could see this as her perhaps initially wanting to do something with him and eventually finding out that it was not what she signed up for, right?
Right, absolutely. So you're going to have to juxtapose the testimony from the prosecution on direct with what we are seeing now on cross. And if there's any question in terms of raising that reasonable doubt, whether there were some consensual times or this was just regret rather than being coerced into something that she did not want to do at the time, that's going to be something that the defense is going to want to hit home to that jury. So you see the building blocks with this cross-examination in trying to raise that reasonable doubt, taking the narrative that the prosecution was able to get out from her on direct and raising those questions in the jury's mind, ultimately saying that she was a willing participant. And if anything, there may have been some regret after the fact, but it wasn't that she was coerced or forced into any of these acts. And I think that's what the defense is trying to do here, take it apart, the direct examination piece by piece, and we'll see that going forward.
And Jem, I wonder, as the defense had asked Ventura, they were talking to her about her 21st birthday in 2007, which Combs attended. They noted that she was a celebrity in her own right by then. But can you talk a little bit about that? And also the fact that she had this 10-year record deal with Bad Boy, which was Sean Combs's label. But at that point, she'd done one album, and after this event, she'd never do another one. How unusual is that?
I mean, all of it. She was a mid-level star at that time. I was working at MTV News at the time. We covered her quite a bit. She had previously worked with a producer-songwriter named Ryan Leslie, who's the person basically credited with discovering her. Diddy kind of pushed him out of the picture, made one record, a 10-year deal. I'm not sure if it was 10 years or 10 albums, is a very, very restrictive deal. I mean, that locks you up for your career and then some. So that says something about the kind of deals that not only him, but like most record labels were signing at the time. It was usually 7 albums. 10 is a lot. But she was established, but he controlled her career. You know, I mean, these contracts lock you up so you can't do anything else. There's a singer right now named Sky Ferrara who, rightly or wrongly, says she's been prevented from releasing music because of the contract she was under. It happens all the time. So he had a very strong hand in not only her career, but obviously her personal life. And I just wonder, I don't think there are probably any texts saying, I love it when you drag me down the hall and beat me when I'm trying to escape. Sorry, just had to say that.
Yeah, no, it was 10 albums, to your point, not 10 years.
Yeah. I did want to ask you, Jem, to follow that up, because to the question of coercion, to the question of the power dynamic in their relationship, she was 19 years old when they met. And if you do the math, that was roughly 2009, I believe. That means that by the time that she was a young child, Sean Combs was already a superstar, known around the world, touring, one of the biggest selling artists of the 90s. So she undoubtedly probably looked up to him, aspiring to be a singer, aspiring to be in the music industry. So that also speaks to that power dynamic. Could you give us some context of who Sean Combs was as she was becoming a young woman and why she might have felt so attracted to him?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, someone like him swoops in and says, I'm going to make you a star. I think she's on the record as saying that things didn't turn dark until later. That's a very, very common syndrome. Now, his temper and his penchant for some violence is a matter of public record. Less so with women at the time, but there was an executive that he either beat or had his thugs beat up with a champagne bottle. That was settled out of afraid of him. He was extremely powerful, extremely wealthy, and his temper definitely kept people behaving a certain way around him. He was one of the most powerful people in the music business for 20-some years because he was so wealthy and because he had so many people who were willing not only to do what he wanted, but were very afraid to speak out against him. Now, I've been in the industry ever since he first started coming around, basically, and you heard about his temper. You heard that people were afraid of him. The violence was a matter of public record. I did not hear about freak-offs. I did not hear about a lot of these things that are coming to light now, and neither did a lot of the people that I know.
Yeah, that is really interesting, Jim. Ariva, we knew that there was a settlement, right? When Cassie Ventura filed her lawsuit very quickly, Combs settled. We only learned the amount of the settlement when Ventura revealed she'd received $20 million, which is a lot of money. That's going to folks on this jury. Maybe it's not as much money to someone like Sean Combs. It is a lot of money objectively to people on this jury. How is the defense going to use that?
Well, a part of what the defense is saying is that she stuck around for the money and that she enjoyed the perks and benefits of being his girlfriend and being in a relationship with him, and that she has profited from this story that she's telling to the jury. But I think jurors are smart enough to appreciate the difference in a civil lawsuit. And some people will feel like the violence that she was subjected to, the $20 million, was not nearly enough. There are people who are shocked at how little $20 million is when you think about the amount of wealth that he has and the violence that she endured in this relationship. And this whole notion, Brianna, of consent, I think, separate that from the violence. If this were a case where you had the text messages and the love, comments that she's making in these text messages, and you didn't have the threats of blackmail, and you didn't have the actual physical violence that the jury now knows about, then I think perhaps this notion of consent makes more sense. But when you pair the violence with the comments, I don't think it's going to be lost on this jury that, yes, at some point, the early stages of this relationship, maybe the honeymoon stages, she may have been willing to participate in these freak-offs to satisfy him because she loved him. But later on, as the relationship goes on, it's very clear that something changes, and the level of violence and the level of threats clearly indicate force, clearly indicate coercion. So the jurors are going to have to grapple with, what do you do with this violence that they've heard about and seen with their very eyes in these videos?
Everyone, stay with us. Great points that you're raising here. We're going to have more just ahead on CNN News Central. Our coverage of the criminal trial of Sean Diddy Combs will continue as the defense team is still cross-examining his former girlfriend and key witness for the prosecution, Cassie Ventura, painting a very different picture of their relationship. We'll have that ahead.